Greetings, friends. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome to the What's Right Show. Happy Monday, March the 3rd. I have, of course, as many of you know, I'm a practicing attorney here in Las Vegas, and I'm just today have a bit of a wild schedule, so I'm having to do this show a few hours earlier than I normally do live in the afternoon. There might be developments between now and 1 o'clock that I'm not aware of, simply because right now it's the morning for me, so I don't know everything that will transpire today. Just being transparent with each and every one of you. Now, my email, sam@samandashlaw.com. Please reach out to me with comments, questions, and concerns. Love hearing from you, and I really do try to respond to every email that I get, and I appreciate all the kind words of support that you all send. You mean the world to me. It's great. I share some of the emails with my family, and I'm just grateful for the relationship that we are building here as we grow this program. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. I also do check my direct messages there, so that's another good way to get a hold of me. Now, last week we had the insane blow up in the Oval Office. And speaking of timing, you know, we had the meeting happen with Trump and Zelensky, and you know, and frankly, because I had a very busy morning, I had only seen, you know, the snippets of the meeting, and I hadn't sat down and watched the 45 minutes leading up to the 2-minute or so, you know, fireworks that everybody was reacting to. Candidly, once I sat down on Saturday and played the entire meeting, it became evident to me that this guy is Zelensky. My goodness. What an absolute bozo. Trump didn't go into this loaded for bear. It was 40 minutes, 45 minutes of pleasantries, and actually Trump showing immense restraint as Zelensky kept pushing back publicly on a deal that had already been agreed to. Because let's remember this, right? We're talking about the mineral deal. The mineral deal is effectively a security agreement, an arrangement. The security guarantees that Zelensky keeps wanting from NATO is irrelevant. NATO is irrelevant. And what I mean by this is, if NATO doesn't have the full support of the United States, what good is it? You know, is the French army going to come and save you against the Russians? Look at the budget. Look at the manpower. Look at the equipment. What the U.S. provides is nothing short of extraordinary in the grand scheme of overall NATO capabilities. So this agreement, this mineral deal, and I said this last week before other people were finally coming around to seeing it for what it was, is a security agreement, because if the United States has a vested financial interest to the tune of $500 billion or more in Ukraine, then that is something that the U.S. will defend, and Putin knows it. So reinvading the country when the United States has a working business relationship with Ukraine is off the table. And people are coming around to seeing that. So I'm not just making stuff up here. I'm telling you, that's a fact. So the deal, the mineral deal in its rough form was agreed to. But there was an agreement between Zelensky and Trump. And remember, you know, it was, I think it was Scott Bessent that went to Kiev and said, look, let's sign the deal. And Zelensky says, no, I'll sign it in Munich at the Munich Security Conference. So Trump sends not Scott Bessent, but the vice president, sent J.D. Vance to Munich. Remember, that's where Vance gave his extraordinary speech chastising all these European globalists. There, Zelensky says, okay, I'll sign it, but I'll sign it at the White House. I'll sign it with President Trump. We'll have a big ceremony. I'll come to D.C. I'll travel to D.C. and we'll sign it when I get to the White House. Well, so third time's a charm, I suppose, is what Team Trump is thinking. Zelensky comes to the White House and then starts acting like a petulant child. Now, we know why. The reason for this is that an hour before his meeting with Trump, Zelensky met with anti-Trump Democrats. The New York Post is reporting this now. And what happened in that meeting is, and we know the meeting occurred because there were tweets and photographs put out by Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat, Connecticut. And he tweeted out, just finished a meeting with President Zelensky here in Washington. He confirmed that the Ukrainian people will not support a fake peace agreement where Putin gets everything he wants and there are no security arrangements for Ukraine. This was posted at 11:15 a.m. on Friday. So Murphy sent this out, and he attached a picture of Zelensky at a conference table, bunch of Democrats, Murphy himself seated opposite Zelensky. A mere 40 minutes later, Zelensky shows up at the White House, goes through, and call it 45 minutes later, you've got the big blowup. The Democrats did this. The Democrats want war. The Democrats want people to die in this war just so they can get at Trump, score political points, continue their Russia, Trump collusion hoax. These people are some of the most despicable war pigs imaginable. And it's not even just that they want war, it's that they're willing to sacrifice human lives to score political points. It's completely disqualifying. Now, I want to talk about Europe for a moment, because, of course, as soon as Zelensky left, the Europeans came around. Oh, Vladimir, that's his first name, Zelensky, we're going to protect you. You signed a $3 billion deal with Keir Starmer in Great Britain. $3 billion. We gave him $350 billion. And what do we get? Attitude? And they smiles for $3 billion from Great Britain. Great Britain, that's going to become a caliphate in 5 years. But this is not even my point. My point here is I'm laughing at Keir Starmer. I'm laughing at President Macron of France. I'm laughing at these clowns because these are countries that have, because of American largesse, themselves been able to pursue a socialistic utopia. They've been able to spend money on social programs like drunken whores, while the United States fills the gap in their military defense spending. If these left-wing leaders across Europe are really so concerned about Putin, why haven't they looked their people in the eye? All the same voters, of course, that are running around with, Ukrainian flags in their windows. Ukraine. Why haven't they looked at these people dead in the eye and said, listen, we have a choice to make. You want to get invaded by Russia? You want Putin to win against us, against our neighboring friendly? We've got to cut social spending. We got to cut socialized medicine. We got to raise the retirement age. We have to go down the list of entitlements. We have to reform, cut the budget for social services in order to raise spending for the military. Didn't happen. Hasn't happened. Is not happening. The thing that enrages me about this so much is that the socialists in Europe are running around going, how dare the United States turn its back on Ukraine? But they themselves will not sacrifice one shred of their socialist utopia that they're creating in order to save Ukraine. They want to save Ukraine with other people's money. And incidentally, what that means is they want the United States of America, you and me, the taxpayers of this country, to borrow more money from China just so that they can continue spending money on their bull crap. The per capita debt that you and I share as citizens, tax-paying citizens of the United States of America, is now north of $105,000 per person. Meaning we owe so much money, we have such a big national debt, that to pay it off, every single person in the country would have to write $100,000+ check. And our friends in Europe, these liberal retards, want us to continue doing that, continue spending, continue borrowing money, continuing to mortgage the futures of our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids, just so that they can continue spending money on stuff that, by the way, you and I know doesn't work. Kiss my money is my message to Europe. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Be back right after this break.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Last week, I called because I read remember when Axios came out with the draft text of the Ukraine-U.S. minerals deal. And one of the things that I told you, and again, I'm not just a pretty face here behind the What's Right microphone. I'm a lawyer, and I'm reading this as an attorney. And I go, look, it seems to me obvious that this is a joint venture that would require the U.S., right, in defense of its economic interests, to protect this deal. So I said this is effectively a security guarantee. Now, you know, I had a number of people email me. By the way, you can do so at sam@samandashlaw.com, and tweet at me, post at me on Twitter, X now as it's called, at What's Right. Sam is my handle. And tell me, look, Sam, first of all, why doesn't Trump come out and say this? Okay. And then two, why does it just explicitly say that there's going to be a security guarantee? And I mean, my response to this is, why say something that is obvious when you know it's a deal point that your opponent opposes? You don't need to. This is classic negotiation. If something that you want from your opponent that he's not willing to give you, right? Because a non-starter for Putin is Ukraine entering into NATO. What is NATO? Well, mutual defense of countries, so basically a security guarantee. Okay? I mean, you saw the news yesterday. Zelensky offered to trade himself for NATO membership. I will quit if Ukraine gets admitted to NATO. That's how stupidly, weird things are getting. But again, you've got a $500 billion deal going on. What's the obvious implication? That Trump's going to walk away from that? Putin knows that. But for Putin, it's a face-saving measure. These people, there's no nuance to any of these people out there. Now, Scott Jennings, Friday night on CNN, basically said just this, and he said it very well. So here's what Jennings said, and he's there with a Washington Post reporter, and this was great because, I think Jennings expected that the Washington Post guy was going to disagree with him. So here's how it went.
The Trump administration believes that if Ukraine goes into business with the United States, that in and of itself is a security guarantee. If your interests become our interests, we're going to be interested in making sure our interests are secure. So it would have been wise for him to understand the economic deal, the mineral deal, is a security guarantee in and of itself. And he lost sight of that today in the argument. Premeditated.
I don't know.
I think Zelensky misplayed it in the room, and you can and we could disagree about J.D. Vance's position on it or agree on it, but either way, Zelensky certainly had been briefed on what the right way to handle this was, and all he had to do was walk in there and say, thank you, I'm really grateful to be here. We want to be partners with the United States. We're grateful for your leadership. Where's the papers, and what are we having for lunch? That's all he had to do. And look, the posturing doesn't have to occur now. If he is serious about wanting peace and ending this war, you don't have to keep posturing as a tough guy. Everybody knows you're tough, all right? The Ukrainians are tough. They're brave. They're fighting a much larger country. Everybody knows. The question for Zelensky is, can you take off the military uniform and put on the uniform of diplomacy? He failed the test today.
And look, the person there next to him, Josh Rogan, actually admitted when that I said, I'm going to surprise you guys. I'm going to agree with Scott. And Scott Jennings kind of theatrically put his hand, whoa, what is this? Because, of course, they square off against each other. Rogan is a Washington Post intelligence reporter and has written some books, and he's, a liberal guy. So there's agreement on this because this is how any smart person's going to read this, including Putin and including Zelensky, which is why now Zelensky has done another 180 and claims he wants to sign the deal. And one of the reasons that Zelensky wants to sign the deal is because over the weekend, Putin let it be known that actually they've got a lot of rare earth minerals in Russia that perhaps the U.S. would be interested in joint venturing on. Now, that was, the minute I saw that, of course, I put out on X, watch Zelensky sign the deal next week. Putin wants the out. Putin wants the deal. I don't know. I feel like I'm screaming out in the void. It's also obvious to anybody whose last name doesn't have a capital D in parentheses or a Ukrainian flag in their bio, which is a way to basically signal to people that you're a tribalist and a blind ideologue. Putin wants to end the war. The war is not really that popular in Europe outside of, Moscow elites. And the same is true, of course, in Ukraine. The war is not popular there either. Conscripts, and I have to say this to my Republican friends, getting at Zelensky for picking up his citizens off the street, kidnapping his people and sending them to the front lines, guess what? That's going on in Russia too, which is why both Putin and Zelensky need this thing to be over like yesterday. If Putin gets his territory connecting Crimea to the Russian mainland, he's got a win. If Zelensky can get a deal signed with the U.S. that is effectively a security guarantee, that's a win. Is it ideal? Is it perfect? Is it just? I mean, maybe not, of course. But it ends the war. And nothing about this is particularly difficult to understand. Marco Rubio, when we come back, talked about the mineral deal and about what needs to happen, the steps forward to achieving peace in Ukraine. This was very good. my overall just impression is here that that we really have a remarkable team leading this effort in the White House. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And Zelensky is absolutely out of his depth. He is not a serious person, a tremendous disappointment as a world leader. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is on. Friends, you can reach me on Twitter, now known as X, at What's Right Sam. And of course, my email, sam@samandashlaw.com. Okay. I have an observation here. I don't think anybody has said this, but over the course of the last, let's say, 10 years or so, a number of prominent leftists, revisionists, historians, etc., have sought to diminish Winston Churchill, right? I mean, of course, Winston Churchill was himself an aristocrat. He was a white male. He fought in colonial wars. He was, after all, a victimizer in the new Marxist, power paradigm that is, woke history. So why am I bringing this up? Because now all the same, libs are running around saying that Zelensky is like Winston Churchill. Over the weekend, I saw Robbie on X, so many people posting these little side-by-sides, a wartime Churchill and a wartime Zelensky. And I have, first off, I have read a number of Winston Churchill's books, and I can tell you that Zelensky's intellect doesn't hold a candle to Winston Churchill's, number one. And number two, Winston Churchill would never blab as much as Zelensky does in these meetings. And that really, when you look at what happened on Friday at the Oval Office, you realize the guy just came in and blabbed. He believed his own press, Zelensky did. He believed all the smoke everybody was blowing up his rear end, including Lindsey Graham, who, by the way, turned on Zelensky over the weekend and said, something about Zelensky saying is, we with popular support and democracy and all this. And Graham's retort was, well, we really won't, really know what, the democratic will of the people is until Ukraine has an election, adopting essentially a Trump, talking point about Zelensky. People are turning on him is my point. And the Democrats are to blame for this. The Democrats, again, they want to scuttle Trump. They want Trump to fail. They want to derail peace talks because they would rather another 50,000 Ukrainians and 50,000 Russians die fighting each other than give Trump a W, give him a win. Tell me I'm wrong. Email me, tell me, yell at me, show me how I am wrong. It's despicable when you really sit down and think about it. So Zelensky goes into this meeting. And by the way, Rubio sits down. I don't know how anybody can take this Caitlin Collins hack. She is, look at her smug face, Robbie, as she's talking to Rubio. Well, anyway, Rubio sits down with Caitlin Collins over at CNN and starts explaining this. This is on her program on Friday after everything went down. And this is actually before it became completely obvious that it was Democrats led by Chris Murphy, Senator Chris Murphy, had basically pumped Zelensky up to reject the Trump deal, to demand actual security guarantees. Okay. And so this was a wide-ranging, but listen to Rubio, how he explains this. So first he talks about the mineral deal.
The president's been very clear. He campaigned on this. He thinks this war should have never started. He believes, and I agree, that had he been president, it never would have happened. Now here we are. He's trying to bring an end to this conflict. We've explained very clearly what our plan is here, which is we want to get the Russians to a negotiating table. We want to explore whether peace is possible. They understand this. They also understand that this agreement that was supposed to be signed today was supposed to be an agreement that binds America economically to Ukraine, which to me, as I've explained, and I think the president alluded to today, is a security guarantee in its own way, because we're involved. It's now us. It's our interests. That was all explained. That was all understood. And nonetheless, for the last 10 days, in every engagement we've had with the Ukrainians, there's been complications in getting that point across, including the public statements that President Zelensky has made. But they insisted on coming to D.C. This agreement could have been signed 5 days ago, but they insisted on coming to Washington. And there was should have been a very clear understanding. Don't come here and create a such scenario where you're going to start lecturing us about how diplomacy isn't going to work. President Zelensky took it in that direction, and it ended in a predictable outcome as a result. It's unfortunate. That wasn't supposed to be this way, but that's the path he chose. And I think, frankly, sends his country backwards in regards to achieving peace, which is what President Trump wants at the end of the day, is for this war to end. He's been as consistent as anyone can be about what his objective is here.
And by the way, I like that Rubio brings it back. He campaigned on this, and then he won. So by implication, this is one of the things that people want. If you look at polling, by the way, Zelensky's number is way down. It's another interesting thing here. The American public supports this far less than they did 3 years ago. And I'll tell you another added layer. If you've listened to me, my thinking on this has changed. The greater this has devolved into a complete debacle. One of the things I tell libs all from the beginning is, what did we learn from Vietnam? A little stalemate, maintenance war, lob some bombs here, they lob some bombs back, da-da-da-da-da, doesn't work. The only kind of war that works is total victory, annihilation, go for gold, end of story. It's what we did in World War II. It's what we did in the Second Iraq War. You go in, you've got an objective, you're going to take Baghdad, you do it. Now, Putin's objective was from the beginning to take Kiev. He didn't get there. Remember, they landed at the airport. They started, special ops. They got stuck in the mud. It's just a giant mess because the Russian military isn't what it's cracked up to be. If Europe was serious about helping Ukraine, they would have gone balls to the walls and told them to beat back the Russians and given them the green light to do it, to hit targets, to bring the pain to Russia. But everybody was going, oh, we'll give you these rockets, but you can't use them to hit any targets inside of Russia, and publicly announced this. This whole thing, the last 3 years, the reason it has dragged on is because of what Biden and these other nincompoop world leaders did to Ukraine by giving them just enough weapons to prolong the fight, but not enough leeway, okay, tying their hands behind their back to actually win. And so Rubio says, look, we are where we are. We want peace. And Collins asks Rubio if Putin can be trusted to make a deal and to keep a lasting peace, right? And that's, that she gets to that. But before she does that, she asks him about the apology, right? Does Zelensky owe an apology?
But what specifically do you want to see President Zelensky apologize for?
Well, apologize for turning this thing into the fiasco for him that it became. There was no need for him to go in there and become antagonistic. Look, this thing went off the rails. You were there, I believe. It went off the rails when he said, let me ask you a question to the vice president. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Well, this is a serious thing. I mean, thousands of people have been killed, thousands. And he talks about all these horrible things that have happened to prisoners of war and children, all true, all bad. This is what we're dealing with here. It needs to come to an end. We are trying to bring it to an end. The way you bring it to an end is you get Russia to the table to talk. And he understands that attacking Putin, no matter how anyone may feel about him personally, forcing the president into a position where you're trying to goad him into attacking Putin, calling him names, maximalist demands about Russia having to pay for the reconstruction, all the sorts of things that you talk about in a negotiation. Well, when you start talking about that aggressively, and the president's a deal maker, he's made deals his entire life, you're not going to get people to the table. And so you start to perceive that maybe Zelensky doesn't want a peace deal. He says he does, but maybe he doesn't. And that active, open undermining of efforts to bring about peace is deeply frustrating for everyone who's been involved in communications with them leading up to today. And I think he should apologize for wasting our time for a meeting that was going to end the way it did.
I think that's exactly right. I think Zelensky needs to pay back Trump and the White House for the beautiful lunch that they had catered that then, well, it was given to staffers. That's what I understand. So Trump kicked Zelensky out of the White House, sent him packing, get the hell out of here. And the lunch that was meant to celebrate the signing of the deal was then consumed by White House staff. I'm sure they were delighted to have that. So what does the peace deal look like moving forward? When we return, quick break here. News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right Show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends, at What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. So Marco Rubio gets on CNN deep into hostile territory with Caitlin Collins pressing him on Friday about the meeting that had happened earlier in the day at the White House, asks him what peace would look like, right? And Marco Rubio says, so Collins asked Rubio if Putin can be trusted to keep the deal, to keep the peace, if there is one. And this is Rubio's response.
President Trump's made deals his entire life. He's not going to get suckered into some deal that's not a real deal. We all understand this. We understand it on our end for certain. And so the goal here is to get to a place we have to explore whether peace is possible. I've said this repeatedly. I don't know. I think it is, based on what they've said so far, but we have to explore that. How else is this war going to end? I ask people, what is the European plan to end this war? I can tell you what one foreign minister told me, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I can tell you what one of them told me, and that is that the war goes on for another year, and at that point, Russia will feel so weakened that they'll beg for a peace. That's another year of killing, another year of dying, another year of destruction, and by the way, not a very realistic plan in my point of view. So if there's a chance of peace, even if it's a 1% chance, that needs to be explored, and that's what President Trump is trying to do here.
President Trump said just when he was leaving the White House after that meeting that he doesn't think President Zelensky wants peace. But isn't that why the Ukrainian leader was in the Oval Office for that meeting today?
Well, he was in the Oval Office to sign a minerals rights deal. That's what he was in the Oval Office to sign today. But again, when you have comments that deliberately appear to be after having discussed this repeatedly, deliberately appear to be geared towards making the argument that peace is not possible. Again, he turns to the vice president. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Almost as if to say, these people, you can't deal with them. You can't have any negotiations with Putin because he can't be trusted, and you're just wasting your time on negotiations. Well, he's basically undermining everything the president has told him he's trying to do. Look, there's no need for that. You start to suspect, does he really want an end to this war? Does he just think that, we have to do whatever he says and give him anything he wants without any end game? That was the Biden strategy. We were funding a stalemate. We were funding a meat grinder. And unfortunately, for the Ukrainians, the Russians have more meat to grind.
And I'm telling you, and I've said this from the beginning, I think the globalists, all these people that get these NGO billions of dollars, wanted the war to grind on for another year, not to weaken Russia, but to further destroy Ukraine so then they could profit off the various government contracts geared at rebuilding the country. And Keir Starmer, after meeting with Zelensky on Sunday, said, yeah, we're ready for boots on the ground. These people want to expand this thing.
First, we will keep the military aid flowing and keep increasing the economic pressure on Russia to strengthen Ukraine now. Second, we agreed that any lasting peace must ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and security, and Ukraine must be at the table. Third, in the event of a peace deal, we will keep boosting Ukraine's own defensive capabilities to deter any future invasion. Fourth, we will go further to develop a coalition of the willing to defend a deal in Ukraine and to guarantee the peace. Not every nation will feel able to contribute, but that can't mean that we sit back. Instead, those willing will intensify planning now with real urgency. The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air. Together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing. We're working with the US on this point after my meeting with President Trump last week. And let me be clear, we agree with the President on the urgent need for a durable peace. Now we need to deliver together.
Listen, this is insanity, right? This guy, by the way, what is he going to do? I mean, he is, again, Great Britain is going to be an Islamic country under 10 years from now. He's going to commit jihad against Moscow. Is that the plan? It's wild stuff. And what do we here in America think about this? Harry Enton on CNN with John Brennan talking about the peace deal and its popularity here at home. Listen to what he had to say.
Let's talk about the idea of a peace deal. And again, the way you ask this matters, but go ahead.
The way you ask it is important, so we can talk about this a little bit. So the poll question essentially is, do you support a Russia-Ukraine negotiated peace deal? The vast majority of Americans, this is what they want. 78% say that they support this idea versus just 16% opposed. Of course, as we were talking about, does this question actually get at what's going on right now? I think you would say that it probably does not necessarily get what's going on right now.
No, the question asked, do you support a Russia-Ukraine negotiated peace deal? Ukraine's not there at the negotiations in Saudi Arabia this week, so the people were not asked this. And I do think, in general, if you ask anyone in any poll, do you support peace, peace tends to rate pretty highly.
Peace tends to win. You rarely get 78% of the country agreeing on anything. They do agree on the idea of a negotiated peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Whether the majority would agree on a Russia peace deal with Ukraine where Ukraine has nothing to do with it, that might be a different question.
Now, John Berman, he actually tries to say, well, of course, peace is popular, but it's a negotiated peace, right? Negotiated peace means both sides give something up. And the point is that Zelensky went into a negotiated peace, conversation with Trump and with J.D. Vance and said that it's not possible. He said this at one point in the meeting. He said, how can you negotiate with Putin? And listing all the terrible things Putin has done. This is a talking point of the left. I don't like negotiating with Putin either. I mean, it's me personally, if this was my country, I get it. But it's the reality that you're dealt. In the same conversation, Zelensky's support here at home, Ukraine and Zelensky polls, John Berman a little surprised at what Harry Enton, CNN's data guru, said about this.
Holy Toledo, look at this trend line here. U.S. support for Ukraine is too much. Back when the war began, back in February of 2022, it was just 7%. Up like a rocket ship. My goodness. Up now in February of 2025 to 41%. And the clear majority of Republicans, and of course Republicans are in charge of the U.S. government now, 62% of Republicans say that the U.S. support for Ukraine is too much. What a difference from just 3 years ago. I can remember, John, all those backyards in the United States with those Ukrainian flags. Far fewer of them today, as Americans' opinions on Ukraine have changed dramatically.
What about opinions of the Ukrainian president?
Right. You know, obviously, if you would
and here we go.
changes amongst the public on feelings towards Ukraine, feelings towards Zelensky have changed also dramatically. Look at this. Confident Zelensky will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. Back in 2022, it was the clear majority, 72% through the floor. Through the floor by 2024, just 48% of Americans say that they're confident that Zelensky will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. And GOP confidence has also plummeted dramatically. Now the clear majority of Republicans are not confident that Zelensky will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. Really a real trend line, ones you rarely see in the American public when it comes to Ukraine and Zelensky. Confidence in both going down through the grade.
And this was before Friday. Okay, this was before all the mess that occurred. This polling took place. And why is that important? If 74% of America want peace and then perceive Zelensky throwing a fit in the White House, acting like a petulant child, getting goaded by Democrats in the Senate to reject Trump's peace overtures, and Trump and all of his top lieutenants keep talking about wanting peace, who is the political winner of that? Think about it. And think about it in the context of the State of the Union speech that we're going to hear tomorrow night. Lots going on, friends. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Top of the hour. Be back after this break. Hi, folks. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Had to today, unfortunately, pre-record the show because of some meetings that I have. Just fair notice, but still here. Happy Monday, March the 3rd. I am delighted to be here, and of course, you know, as I'm thinking about this Ukraine thing and the greater context of everything going on tomorrow night, and we will carry it here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Trump's State of the Union speech. You know, Trump is this speech is going to be triumphant in a number of ways. But I first kind of a big picture here about war. Where, you know, there's a lot of mention of war in the last week. Now, one of the things that the Democrats are trying to do in order to prolong the war, deal Trump a black eye in his efforts to reach a diplomatic conclusion to the war in Ukraine, is to keep mentioning all the war atrocities. And I've seen, you know, an explosion. By the way, Republicans, conservatives who have the opposite view doing the same thing, and it just sort of depends, showing atrocities on both sides of this conflict. My takeaway from it is that it's just awful. And I would never send my son to fight in this war. Wouldn't send my son to fight in any pointless conflict that is, you know, that doesn't value his life. But it's interesting to me when I look at this and I see this, you know, this sort of this propagandizing of war and how awful it is. And then, of course, talking about the situation in Gaza, which is another conflict bungled by the Biden administration. That the critical problem with fighting, if you don't have a clear objective, is that you get stuck in the mud and you turn the conflict into a human meat grinder. And, you know, there have been historic battles, of course, that come to mind that are great examples of this. Stalingrad, of course, during World War II was described by historians actually as the largest human meat grinder in the history of war. And it was precisely this because the Nazis, Germans dug themselves in, and were all intent, had to basically, it was a make or break battle for Germany. And Russia had endless manpower. And so they just sent them in there. I think Russian losses were staggering. But one of the things, the reason that reached, that reached an end, a conclusion. Of course, the Soviet Union there defeated Germany, is because both sides were in it to win it, no holds bar. Now, we don't have that. We haven't had that for the past 2-3 years. We haven't had it, by the way, in Ukraine. We haven't had it in Gaza either. And before you get all mad at me, how many times did the Biden administration tell Israel, we support you, but you can do this, but here are these bombs, but not these bombs? We're also distracted by everything going on that we've missed something very important that occurred in the last couple weeks. Remember that that gauntlet that Trump threw down to the boys over in Hamas, where he said, I don't know, Saturday at noon, it's you don't get the hostages back by then, I'm FAFO, basically, right? F around and find out. And Saturday came and went. The hostages, all of them, have not been released. We've since learned, just real atrocities. Hamas came out and paraded the bodies, of dead babies that they had strangled while claiming that they died in an Israeli airstrike, that they strangled, to loud music and cheers from the crowd. And then we got distracted by Ukraine. We got distracted by these theatrics from Zelensky and everything. And so our fleeting attention span sort of went elsewhere. But I'm coming back to this right now because something came of that was very important. Because Trump didn't just say, Saturday, high noon, be there or be square, turn over the hostages or else. There's another part to it. He said, I will let the Israelis do whatever they need to do after then, right? I'm just tell Bibi, do what you got to do. And he did it. And he did it publicly. You hear this blockade? Listen, it's war. I never understood why Israel didn't cut water, didn't cut fuel, didn't cut food to Gaza. I never understood it. You're going to feed your enemy? In war, you do not answer to university professors, okay? At Columbia University. You don't answer to weird. Biden did because he was in the midst of a re-election campaign at one point where he was trying to be everything to everybody. Biden was in this impossible position because he wasn't actually around mentally for much of it, but his team was trying to both appease, radical Islamists within the Democratic Party and then Jewish Democrats. They make for some very odd bedfellows, to be honest. But anyway, so they could never really find the right thing to do. So what did they do? They constantly hampered Israel's efforts to actually get stuff done. And when we write the history books about Gaza, about October 7th, the aftermath, right? The Gaza war, Ukraine. One emerging theme that I think historians will spend many, many pages on will be how the dithering of Team Biden led to, actually in the end, a disproportionately large loss of life that could have been prevented had we just come in with decisive force. Or at least allowed, in Israel's case, decisive force to be used. So I'm seeing these reports that Israel's cutting off supplies to Gaza. Of course, by the way, hilarious. Egypt is going, oh, how can you do this? Israel, how can you do this? Meanwhile, the Gaza Egypt border, right, is, as we know, one of the most secure, impenetrable borders in the world, right? This thing puts the Berlin Wall looks like a nice little Lego set compared to what the Egyptians have built to contain, you know, the Hamas animals, okay, in Gaza. So it's, you know, it's just, it fascinates me, right? It's just and this is the right approach. And why? Because Trump said, go and do it. Then what did Trump do? He posts an AI video of Trump Gaza after saying, hey, you know what? Maybe the U.S. is going to come in and we'll just redevelop it and own it and, you know, and forget Israel and forget the Hamas. We're just going to take this thing over. I'm going to turn it into Trump Gaza and everything's going to be golden. So he puts out this AI video of himself and Bibi Netanyahu shirtless, relaxing on the beach of Gaza. and skyscrapers, you know, Trump branded buildings. And everybody has a meltdown over this. But what's the message, right? This isn't me tweeting this. This is not a media personality tweeting this out, a private citizen. This is the president of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, and an ally of Israel tweeting it out. The message is clear. You're effed. That was the message to Gaza. And the beautiful thing is, now you will watch Israel finish it. Don't always have a crystal ball. I could be wrong, but I will bet the farm that in the coming weeks, you will see the kind of warfare in Gaza that we hadn't seen yet. They will finish the job and do the previously unthinkable, which is obviously the two-state solution is off the table. It's over. We're not entertaining a two-state solution with Palestine and Israel. It ain't going to happen. Israel is for Israel. Okay? Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah, okay? They miscalculated on October 7th, and they're going to pay the price. And their people, okay, their people supported this. And unfortunately, this is how things work. They will pay the price too. But it's not sustainable to keep, you know, failing. And I'm convinced that again, one of the reasons beyond just the immediate political convenience of trying to placate the pro-Palestinian lobby within the Democratic Party, and at the same time, of course, you know, giving lip service to Israel for the sake of maintaining Jewish Democrats who, of course, have been fleeing the Democratic Party, that there's a more, just like in Ukraine, there's a more cynical read on this, which is when you look at what Doge is doing, when you look and you follow the money and you see that there's these 7,000 plus or minus, you know, government connected, politically connected NGOs that are getting like 80, 90% of billions of dollars of funding, you realize that when places get destroyed, when conflict drags on, when loss of life increases, when destruction of property grows, right? All of these NGOs profit. And then the war ends, and they make an appeal to Congress where congressmen and Democrats give long speeches about our need to help rebuild Gaza for Gazans. And all of a sudden, appropriations go out for hundreds of billions of dollars. And, you know, most people on the street don't even think about it. Hundreds of, okay, whatever. And that all ends up in the coffers of all of these clowns. The same people that urged a prolonging of the conflicts in the first place. It's really diabolical when you think about it. Sam Mirejovsky here, the What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam & Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Friends, I have to make a confession here. I am a huge Bill Murray fan. Okay. Love Bill Murray. Love his movies. Think he's just a funny guy. And I've always enjoyed his overall aesthetic. Now, I gotta talk about this appearance on Rogan real fast. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings and welcome to the program. So Murray goes on Joe Rogan, and there's a clip that's been kind of circulating around where Murray basically admits that because, of a situation that he's very familiar with, and seeing how that particular person was done dirty by Woodward, who is, of course, of the Watergate journalist, Bob Woodward, who did Nixon in, that he's realized that Nixon probably was set up. Now, this clip is making the rounds. Here's the clip, by the way. This is what everybody's talking about.
I read Wired, the book written by, Woodward, about Belushi. I read like 5 pages of Wired, and I went, oh, my God. They framed Nixon. like, all of a sudden I went, oh my God, if this is what he writes about my friend that I've known, for half of my adult life, which is completely inaccurate, talking to like the people of the outer circle getting the story. What the hell could they have done to Nixon? I just felt like if he did this to my friend like this, and I acknowledge I only read 5 pages, but the 5 pages I read, made me want to set fire to the whole thing.
Jamie, see if you can
Those
find
5 pages, I went, if he did this to Belushi, what he did to Nixon is probably soiled for me too. I can't take it. And I know you say, well, you could have 2 sources and everything like that, but the 2 sources that he had, if he had them for the Wired book, were so far outside the inner circle that it was criminal, cruel.
Yeah, so referring to, of course, his friend John Belushi. So I listened, by the way, to the entire episode. It was a short one, Robbie, actually, for Rogan. Rogan typically talks for 3 hours. You guys think that I talk a lot. No. Can you imagine 3 hours? I can't listen to every Rogan. And he has interesting people on, like the one right before Murray was Elon Musk. And it's there's like good information in there, but it's just so long. Anyway. So I'm listening to the whole thing because I'm fascinated by Bill Murray, and he doesn't give long interviews about anything, very often. And I walked away from it, Robbie, with the reminder of the adage, how true it is, that the advice, don't meet your heroes. Okay. Because at the end of so they get into the Belushi thing, and he's right, of course. You don't realize how full of SHI, the media is, okay? Until they write about something that intimately. Bill Murray explains how he spent time living, on John Belushi's couch. Like he knew John Belushi very, 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 very well. And he knows all the people that know or knew Belushi very, 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 very well. And he says, that Woodward didn't talk to any of them. And this is sort of one of those awakenings that you have. And I had it early on, dealing with media in my 20s, realizing just how much these people lie, because they'd come out with stories about stuff that I knew or that were about me. And it was like, well, that's not right. Who did they talk to for that? I mean, where did they get this information? Like, this is not right. And it wasn't defensive. It just was wrong. It was obviously incorrect. And that's, since that point in time, I've become very suspicious of anything that's, written in the press, whether it's, conservative or not, but particularly when it's left-wing media. But that wasn't the part of the story that got me, Robbie. And I don't know if you listened to the interview, but as almost a passing aside toward when things are starting to wind down, Bill Murray mentions how San Francisco is a beautiful place, and because he's asking Rogan where he lived, and Rogan said that for a time, as a young person, lived in San Francisco, and Bill Murray says, "Oh, it's a beautiful city," and then he says, well, there's been a lot made politically of the fact that it's not as great as it once was, but Bill Murray sort of comes to the defense of San Francisco. And I'm almost like kind of getting bored with this at this point because it's not a very good interview. And Bill Murray, he's getting old and he's kind of, he's not remembering names and he's just, not taking it very seriously. So I'm starting to kind of tune out. Now I'm perked up because now I'm interested in, I see we're getting into a point in time where I want to determine Bill Murray's ability to actually see something beyond just his friend getting shafted by Bob Woodward, right? Can he take the information that he's gleaned from seeing how the media operates and apply it to something else that he maybe doesn't know everything about? And the answer is no. Bill Murray goes on to go, well, I just think, the homeless, it's just so tragic. And I think we need solutions. And Rogan is Rogan is starstruck, okay, by Bill Murray. He admits that from the beginning. So Rogan goes in and goes, and Rogan sometimes is a little bit of a lightweight on this stuff, okay? Because he doesn't come down, he's not a super ideologue. He's kind of a pothead. So he goes in there, well, so he starts saying, well, but, there are people who have, there's an incentive to have people homeless. And Bill Murray almost acts like he's shocked. Like, what do you mean? Like, you think that they actually want people pooping on the street? I wanted to reach Robbie through the podcast and go to both of them and be like, there are literally industries. And Rogan got to it eventually a little bit. But they get paid the bigger the problem gets. If they solve homelessness, these NGOs stop getting money. So that's what it is. I got to run. It's already time. I bottom of the hour. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Be right back, folks. Hi, friends. Welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Of course, the podcast of this program available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. We have the video now. That's one of the newer things that we're doing in the last few months. And of course, that's available on Spotify and of course, on Twitter, where you can follow at What's Right Show and me at What's Right Sam. Twitter, of course, now referred to as X. Excellent, friends. This hour of the program, as always, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. A number of people always ask me, Sam, I know you do the commercials for your firm. What's that all about? And I said, well, listen, the firm allows me to do this program. And the beautiful thing about it is I have the liberty to say and to think and to share with you whatever it is that I want to do. I have that freedom, and I have that freedom because of Sam and Ash Injury Law. So I have to thank my partner Ashley for putting up with this, and of course she's a great encouragement. But anyway, that's what this is all about, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Having the freedom to speak your mind is wonderful. And I look at I criticize the media all the time, and I think even Fox News tells their hosts what they can't say. Tucker Carlson had this problem. I don't always agree with Tucker, but he was pretty constrained by the folks over at Fox News, and then I think ultimately that led to his ouster more than anything. A constant friction between Tucker, his producers, and the executives at Fox News. So, if you are in an accident, you or a loved one, friend or family member, get hurt, get rear-ended, have an injury of any kind, get some advice on it, please. The time to call is now. You don't want to hold off. If you've hurt in Nevada or California, Sam & Ash has offices in both states. We've got a great team of people, good people at work here, and we will talk to you, help you out, give you advice, and if needed, take you on as a client. 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. All right. Tim Walz, according to the New York Post, says he may run for president in 2028. Okay, bring it. Let's add him to the list of wonderful stories of people that are entering the chat. I love it. I absolutely love it. The Democratic Party continues to double down on stupid. Look, I don't know. I don't know if there is a single Democrat right now that could beat J.D. Vance if the election were held today. So time will tell. By the way, I do want to mention, speaking of Democrats doing truly outrageously stupid things, California. Because, one of the top Democrat contenders for 28 is Newsom, and he's always been, considered, the front runner. And I told you that he was playing the long game, defending, he defended Biden to the bitter end. It wasn't until Biden sent the letter, the single page, basically email out, saying he was not seeking re-election. Up until that moment, Newsom supported Biden every step of the way, carried water for him like a true, Democratic Party, operative. And then, of course, as soon as Kamala Harris he was a loyal foot soldier of the Harris campaign. And I explained to you that this is how you do it. This is the long game. You do not go against the party. You're in a Democratic Party. You can't be a maverick. You have to ingratiate yourself to party leadership. If party leadership says jump, you say yes, and how high. So it is from the great state of California, home of Gavin Newsom, who is facing a massive recall effort. This is not insignificant. I think it does. And it will present a bit of a problem for him if the recall is successful, and for him to have any kind of a national presence. California now, you've seen this bill where they want to limit home defense. This is crazy. This is the state that has made it a policy of the state of California to allow criminals to run free. If you had to sum up, the criminal justice system in California over the past 10 years, it is to make it easier for criminals to steal, because the state of California has consistently at every turn lessened penalties and hampered law enforcement from going out and defending people. So the result of it, of course, is that there are a number of home invasion robberies, burglaries, etc., cropping up, and it's going up exponentially. The key amendments in Assembly Bill 1333 is the elimination of certain justifications of deadly force. It removes legal protection for using deadly force solely to defend property or habitation, example, your home. We would call this the castle doctrine. My house, my castle, you come in, you die. There is now would be a duty to retreat from your home. Right now, the duty to retreat is only in public spaces, and there's an excessive force clause. Homicide is not justifiable if a person uses more force than reasonably necessary to counter a threat. So somebody has to go into your house and try to kill you with a deadly weapon in order for you to kill them. It is just absolutely crazy. The Democrats want you to be a victim. I mean, it's a terrible law. I hope it doesn't pass, but you imagine California begin to put on trial homeowners defending themselves against the very criminals that California emboldened to commit crimes. It's wild stuff. Did you see the Boston mayor? There's some psycho, knife-wielding criminal. The police shot him, and the Boston mayor, Michelle Wu, had this insane press conference giving basically her condolences to the dead criminal. This is crazy. Listen to this.
My condolences and all of our thoughts are with the family of the individual whose life has been lost.
Our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of the individual who's been lost.
The perpetrator.
So our condolences go to the individual who was killed tonight.
That was Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, Kevin Hayden, the DA of Suffolk County, and the Boston Police Commissioner, Michael Cox. You live in Boston, you're screwed. Your mayor, your DA, and your police commissioner are all expressing condolences for an individual that had to be shot by the police after going on a knife rampage. This is where the Democratic Party will continue to lose, and lose. And Tim Walz, by the way, would just be more of this, right? This is a guy whose wife, I guess that's what she is, his wife, his beard, said that she had to open the windows of the mayoral mansion, right? The governor's mansion, excuse me, in Minneapolis, to smell the smell of the riots, of the tires burning, businesses smoldering. In the wake of the George Floyd riots, the sweet smell of justice in the air. There are people that love when law-abiding citizens, taxpayers, get shafted. Rahm Emanuel sat down with Bill Maher on Friday and talked a little bit about this. Maybe there are some reasonable Democrats out there. This is the future of the Democratic Party. I don't want to say it too out loud because I want them to continue to double down on wacko so we, Republicans, continue to win. But listen to Rahm Emanuel say this about his time in Chicago.
There is a general rule. I had this when I was mayor. Safe streets, strong schools, stable finances. Focus on those three things and your city's going to be fine. We've gone through 5 years where people became way too permissive of the culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster. Yeah. And our school, and I'll say this about our schools. I don't want to hear another word about the locker room. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom. You better start focusing on the classroom. I agree. We had the worst reading scores for 8th graders in 30 years. And nobody, not a governor, not a mayor, not a president, not a secretary of education is talking about it. We're all wrapped up. Look, in 7th grade, if I known that I could have said the word they and got in the girls' bathroom, I would have done it. Okay, we literally are a superpower. We're facing off against China with 1.4 billion people, and 2/3 of our children can't read 8th grade level. So no more about the lot. Wait a second, I'm on a roll for a second. Yeah. No more. I don't want to hear. I gave him the light. But I don't want to hear another word about the classroom. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom until you tell me what you're going to do with the classroom. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Now, Fareed Zakaria, CNN guy, is there in the chat, and he cuts in and says this about the Democrat cities, right? So he kind of cuts in, and this is Zakaria speaking.
Be fair, this is actually...
I was being fair.
No, this is a huge Democratic Party problem. If you look at Democratic cities, they are terribly run. They have incredibly high taxes. It is impossible to build, so the cost of housing. Let me finish. I give you a chance. Cost of housing is crazy in places like New York and Chicago. If you look at democratic states, you go look at New York versus Florida, okay? Roughly the same population. The budget of New York State is twice that of Florida. What do they have? Streets paved with gold? I live in New York. I pay the highest taxes in New York. You get nothing for it. And I think that is the image people have of the Democratic Party. Lots of taxes, lots of regulation, but nothing gets done.
Hey,
and I think
I live in L.A.
Right. Listen, the Democrats have to own this and realize the answer to everything is not more taxes, more regulation. People are fed up of that, and they feel that it isn't working.
Well, I think we know all of this to be evident, okay? So, but I think beyond talking about it on Bill Maher's program, they're not going to do anything about it. That's my take. All right, be right back after this, folks. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. I woke up this morning to news of yet another terror attack in Germany, in Europe. A driver reportedly by the name of Ali Hodge drove his car into a crowded pedestrian zone in Mannheim, Germany. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Ali Hodge was probably a right-wing extremist. Right, Robbie? Media is at pains to even name him. Okay? I'm looking at his picture. Okay? He does not look like a member of the AfD. Germany missed an opportunity to firmly install the AfD and keep people like Mr. Hodge out of the country. But alas, this suicidal empathy continues to plague the Western world. And I don't know, honestly, what it's going to take to fix this. All right, welcome to the program. This hour of the What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. I think, Robbie, the story last week that Chris Rufo broke about all the secret NSA sex chat rooms where during work hours, members of the NSA talked about basically peeing on each other. I'm not going to get into all the details because it was really vile stuff, but huge, amounts of on-work time was spent basically engaged in chatting about sexual fantasies. And, we're facing threats from China. We're constantly reminded by the mainstream media and the Democrats how dangerous Putin is. We have people like Ali Hodge in Germany who are living in our midst, who are, want to do us wrong. We had an open border, 160,000 people a day crossing it, give or take, under Joe Biden. And our folks charged with keeping the country safe were busy talking about autogynephilia. I mean, that's the story. I don't care. Look, if somebody has some weird sex fetish and they do their job really well, I really don't give a crap. I'm not a Puritan. My point is that these people weren't doing their work. And this wasn't like some no-show dumb job. This was kind of an important job, i.e. keeping the country safe. So common sense. This just boggles the mind. And this is why I don't feel sorry, actually, for any of these government workers that are getting challenged for the first time to explain themselves and to talk about, mention, write down accountability for their job performance. Can you imagine these NSA guys typing out an email to Elon Musk? Okay, last week I mentioned peeing on my friend. I mentioned having my pubic hair removed. I mentioned feminization surgery. What did you do last week? Oh, I don't know. God, ew. We're paying for this. Did you see that video of the some unnamed government worker complaining that the Elon Musk, 5 things that you did last week, saying that it was like, it must be what it's like living in North Korea? Here, wait, we have the tape. Here's this woman. She's literally red-faced, like puffy eyes. She's been crying over the fact that Elon Musk demanded she tell him what she did last week.
The feeling of just like absolute existential dread that I felt typing out a response to that email is something that I wish I could convey to everyone, because it felt like such a glimpse into the reality that they are trying to create. And it was terrifying. It felt like, you will do what I say or else. The email that we received did not say that failure to respond would be taken as a resignation, but the post on X did say that. And leadership at my agency is pretty much like, the email's authentic, but we don't know if the threat is or is not. We are going to respond, but kind of left it up to each of us to decide what to do. This whole thing is an exercise for them to show us how much power they have and how little we have, and how we must do what they say. And it's so insane because, again, who the is Elon? Like, how does he get to decide that he is king of the federal employees, king of HR at the Office of Personnel Management? And
wait, hold the tape. The reason Elon Musk gets to do this is because he was authorized by the President of the United States, who is the head of the executive branch for whom you work. That's why. By the way, if the email had come from Trump, would you be, well, you'd be still spouting off about this. But my point is, right, Trump, as president, can't possibly be tasked with doing everything himself. This is why he has people in management that work under his authority. Boy, these people getting paid by us? Fire them all.
And he gets to tell us, send this email or you're fired, like you lose your job. There's no rationale here that makes it make any sense outside of, look how much power I have and you better listen or your livelihood is gone. The 2 million people that are gonna have to respond to this email, if they choose to, are they gonna go through 2 million emails to make sure that they were honest, to make sure that they were authentic, to make sure that the items listed out were relevant to the people's jobs, to make sure that the person, like, there's so many things that would have to happen for them to like actually legitimately go through these emails, and that's not going to happen because it just like, it can't happen, you know? And again, like, it's just a flex. It's just, you need to know who's in charge, and this is one of the ways we're making you aware. And the feeling that I felt responding to that email was such a glimpse into a possible future here, a probable future here if we don't do something about it. It felt so scary and so heartbreaking. It felt much like I would imagine living in a place like what I always imagined North Korea to be like, where the energy is, yes, master, your wish is my command.
Whoa! Wow. Yes, master, your wish is my command. I don't think this lady has any idea what North Korea is like. By the way, I'm speechless. Every one of these people needs to be fired. This is the 5th column inside our government and has been for many, many years. All right, folks, have a great day. We'll do this all again tomorrow. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Be well.